Let's go to breakdown on this in terms of the significance of this march, Great March of Return rallies. Mick Napier from the Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign joins us now. Mick Napier, this is probably one of the longest protest marches in recent memory, especially when it comes to the Palestinian cause. And of course, on the downside, you're looking at the deaths and injuries that the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip have had to sustain. Do you think that this Great March of Return is delivering its message?
It's quite unprecedented that week after week, the people of Gaza, the beleaguered and besieged people of Gaza, continue to demand their right of return. A right of return, your viewers should recall, was made a precondition for Israel being allowed to join the United Nations after the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. So Israel has enjoyed membership of the United Nations and has denied the Palestinians the right of return, which the United Nations said was non-negotiable. Look, the Zionists have been very consistent, sometimes accelerated, sometimes not so quick, but their goal has been to take over the entire land surface of Palestine with as few Palestinians as possible. And this has meant massacre after massacre. The history of the Palestinian people since '48 is punctuated by frequent massacres, sometimes thousands and sometimes merely a few hundred. Because it's necessary, the only way that a land can be cleared of its native people and the population replaced by families coming from Europe and America and around the world, the only way this can be done is by massive violence. And I think it's important to remember something else, that there are probably 6 or 7 million Zionist Jews in Israel-Palestine at the moment. And they're surrounded by 400 million Arabs and more populations in the Middle East who recognize the danger that Zionism poses. So the intensity of the violence, I think, is probably partly explained by the fear that the Zionist leaders have that this may not go on forever, and that they ultimately will come up against the fact that the Arab peoples and the other peoples of the Middle East will not remain forever under sheikhs and kings and brutal dictatorships which act as an advance guard for Egypt. Israel, sorry, that was a slip of the tongue, but a meaningful one. Israeli universities openly discuss the demographic threat that there are too many Palestinians still inside Palestine. And so every killing, I hate to say, is a small victory for the Zionists. And it goes on, week after week after week. And this demographic threat is always at the forefront of everything that the Zionists do. And, you know, these snipers who are now seen weekly, callously killing demonstrators assembling to demand their rights under international law is also something quite unprecedented. These are not warriors. This is not hot blood in a time of war where terrible things happen, but it's explicable in terms of the dynamics of war. Mm-hmm. This is a cold-blooded massacre of Palestinian men, women, and children who are demanding their international rights. And I think, to answer your question somewhat belatedly, I don't think these martyrs are dying in vain. Every anti-colonial struggle puts a very, very high cost on the Algerians, the people of South Yemen, and Libya and elsewhere. There's always a very high cost, and I hate to say that. But the martyrs are not dying in vain. Israel is a pariah state around the world. The international campaign of BDS is growing. It doesn't go in any retro direction. It's moving forward. And even in America, where Israel in the past has enjoyed bipartisan support, where voices raised in support of Palestine were immediately silenced, despite intense repression of pro-Palestine voices, that previous bipartisan support is completely broken. And we have to thank Netanyahu and Trump partly for that. So to answer your question, it's tragic. The Israelis can kill Palestinians at will, but they cannot force banks and some Western Christian churches not to boycott Israel. And what can I say? We owe the Palestinian resistance a great debt around the world. They have proven that Western talk of democracy is an empty sham. The Palestinians, let's remember, are being punished for voting for a party that Washington and Brussels and London did not approve of, and all the suffering and crimes visited upon them since then is because they used a democratic voting opportunity in a way that my government doesn't approve of. My final point is this: Israel could not do this without the open support of Western governments. They may hold their noses at what Israel's doing, but my own government, the British government, continues to sell sniper rifle parts to the Israeli army.
Thank you for that. We appreciate it. Mick Napier from the Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign. And I'd also like to thank Ashraf Shannon, our correspondent from the Gaza Strip. And that does it for this edition of the News Review.